Morning at NTV. We are live from Kampala's Sweden Conference Center. It's a beautiful day. It's a very remarkable day. I'm Andrew Chamagero Omuntuwa Wensi, and a lot is happening around the country. But today we have the elections of the LOC5s. They want to plead with Ugandans going for that election. Please stay calm. Stay calm, vote and stay calm. Now, women in election have always been expected to front the issues affecting women. However, in the 2021 elections, the issue of women seems to have become mute. To speak to us about the expectations of women and why their agenda should not be ignored, we have Jen Francine Oling, an activist and the executive director of Women in Development. And later we'll be joined by another person, possibly to have this conversation a little bit much more amplified. But before we get to that conversation, yesterday there is an umbrella of NGOs that came together to make sure that they look at the elections, they observe the elections as and when they're running. Let's take a look at that and then we can start the conversation.
The domestic observers will carry the huge responsibility of observing these coming elections.
Election observers, be they domestic or foreign, play a major role in the electoral process. They mobilize to observe an election in order to engage citizens in the election process, deter fraud, expose problems and irregularities, provide an accurate measure of the quality of the election, promote confidence in the process and outcomes, and provide recommendations for improving the process for the next election. Over the last few election cycles, a lot of attention has been placed on foreign observers, but in 2021, given the disruptions and restrictions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, local observers are likely to play a much more prominent role.
The chances of any external observers, EU, Commonwealth, EU, and so on, at the time of these elections is, as of now, it may change, but as of now, the chances are totally nil.
A consortium of 60 organizations have come together under the National Election Watch Uganda, NUU, as observers ahead of the 2021 general elections.
These organizations possess a wealth of experience in elections, from past election-related mobilization, monitoring, observation, and civic conscientization efforts. The NUU believes in power of collectivity and leveraging on decades of innovation. NUU will observe the 2020-2021 election process in 135 districts.
The 60 organizations are clustered under different thematic areas that the observation of the electoral process will be done under.
We'll be interested on the gender issues and the gender dynamics and women's participation in the electoral process, youth and elections, persons with disabilities, money in elections, media and ICT, peace and security, human rights will be observed by specific organizations in NUU.
The NUU is a citizen-centered vehicle which will have 800 short-term observers on polling day. Rita Kanya, NTV.
Well, that's a conversation you've seen at the NUU, and joining us this early morning we have Jen Francine Oling. Good to have you this early morning, Jen. For starters, what preempted this collaboration of all NGOs, you coming together and just say you're going to observe elections?
This time round, we are against any form of violence that can come up during elections. We've already witnessed the primaries. Those signs were not good. So it hints that maybe the elections itself will have a lot of violence and violent-related activities. So we really want to make sure there's safety, security. There's a lot of human rights. Human rights issues are key, that we really think human rights should be respected during these general upcoming elections, and we are really going to observe to make sure, especially the female political aspirants are not intimidated, are not threatened, are not beaten, have not gone through any form of violence, and also to protect every other person taking in active politics not to go through this violence. Violence is not good for our country.
Okay. What are some of the issues that should not be ignored when it comes to women in elections? because recently, the other day, I saw the woman member of parliament from Bali, that is Connie Galiwango, in battles with police officers and some rowdy young boys. What are some of these key issues that we should, as media as well, pay a keen eye to that?
I think one issue, to be honest, Andrew, police brutality. For us in the civil society, you know, we understand what it is when we talk about the police brutality. The police take upon themselves, even for a very small mistake, to respond with brutality, and we are thinking the police should be really able to understand, especially these women, the women political aspirants, and we're also thinking human rights. I'm still repeating, it is human key, and I want to inform the colleagues in the media like you that we should focus a lot on the human rights component in this election. We should also look at women. I think we still have to protect these women from violence. And then we must make sure the rigging that the country and Ugandans complain about does not cross the path, so that we have free and fair elections. When we talk about free and fair elections, we are trying to think everyone should really, you know, should be satisfied with the results. These complaints are the ones that kick out violence. And election violence can be so bad for any country. We remember the one in Kenya. So we are onto our feet. We are doing everything possible to support this country. We are Ugandans, to make sure that if we observe a few of those things, there shouldn't be any violence whatsoever. Violence is never good.
Looking at the current mode where we are, is the political season, and women in most cases are taken for granted, if I should say that way, when it goes to elections. They're never heard. If they are vying for a particular position and they don't have a man working with them, they're not sure that possibly they're married, or how sure they're going to handle this. Looking at all those stereotyping that is going around, what avenues do we have to address them that the citizens can possibly understand from the other perspective?
Before I get there, I want to talk about the few meetings we've had with the Electoral Commission. We've been, there are documents we shared, we wrote to them, asking them to, we actually petition, asking them to work on issues like women being intimidated, women being threatened, women's personalities being attacked, to scare them off the political positions that they're actively pursuing. So I am thinking Ugandans should also watch a few of those protection issues. Any Ugandan has a responsibility of protecting another who is a good candidate of violence. Any Ugandan has a responsibility of making sure someone is not attacked in a way they don't deserve. It is all respect for human rights. All these discussions we are having, Andrew, surround the human rights issues. And the chairperson, Isi, was very understanding. He understood our documents, he understood our complaints, he understood our concerns, and he said they are trying to do everything possible to see that women do not go through threats, intimidations, and perhaps unlawful arrest and detention, and yet they are supposed to pursue. We want more women in elective politics.
Oh, yes.
Because we want our issues to be on top agenda in Parliament in 2021.
Do you feel, General Francis Oling, do you feel in this current 10th Parliament, the women issues were much more amplified as they were expected to be, especially when we got to issues like safe motherhood, health, and others? Were they amplified to the magnitude you'd wish them to be?
I would say 50-50. We haven't reached where we had hoped that we would be. And also one thing that is disappointing that the women of Oyam asked me to talk about. Our women leaders, when we vote them, Andrew, they reach Parliament, most of them don't pick calls. And we are there for them. We send them there to represent us, to put our issues on top of the agenda in Parliament.
Then you vote them out.
So
it's that simple. You vote them out.
So you wouldn't pick our calls. We know you, and we are not sending you back to Parliament. This is a very serious matter. Because we want child and maternal health to be improved. Actually, we are asking government to allocate like 6% of the national budget to child and maternal health alone. Now, if we vote our women who are not going to speak about this time and again to put the unnecessary pressure on government, then I think we are still getting back. And this answers the question that those issues were not yet 100% addressed like we want them to be. So we are also voting wisely. For 3 months, we've been having our meetings as women per sub-county. We are trying to strategize on who do we send to parliament, who is more concerned about us. If we send you to say no, and you reach on the floor of parliament, you hold your microphone and say, yes, you are not going back, because we have our list of who we want. Jen, this is a job we are giving you. Okay. Go and speak for us.
Yes, Jen, I really understand. But while you're on ground and you're trying to create this awareness among the women that they make informed decisions when this time of election comes, what kind of attitude did you read from the women? Are they dissatisfied? Are they open enough to speak about their own issues to fellow women? Do they trust the system? Do they trust the police? And you, as a civil society activist, especially for women in development, do you trust the way police handles women issues on a whole?
No, we even have, we are trying to think that we can write to the president. We can also write to the IGP.
Do we need to write to the president, or is there?
Yes, because there's something we want to be included in the police training school.
Okay.
The police should be trained on human rights. It should be a very key course unit in the police training school. I do not know how, Andrew. The police handles us as if we are men, you know. And if you are caught, maybe they think you're a criminal, they will come mishandle you, you know, throwing women onto the police trucks must stop. I have watched this several times. We are not to be thrown on police trucks, even when someone is into conflict with the law. The police has a duty to exercise professionalism. That is why we want those who are concerned with the police training to make human rights issues key, because beating women by police does not give any sense. It puts our country at stake. The international community is watching, and it makes us come down to zero. So we want the police to work with us well as women. And it is only the professionalism from the side of the police that will cut down certain crimes in this country.
Oh, yes.
Women are not gods, man. You know, they can just bundle you, throw in the police. I watch and I put my head down and say, God, my country. You know. So we want the police to have human rights
prioritized.
to be into their training. So when they're coming out, they know that this is dehumanizing, this is degrading, this is not good.
Now, Jen, going back to the women in the villages where you are, what do you make of the women's attitudes? What are some of their key pressure issues they really want? They're patent and they want them to be amplified.
The issues, you know, we keep discussing with them at the community level. One key issue that came up is education of girls, and also to make schools a safer space for girls. We want more girls to be educated, perhaps more women sent to, like, when girls get this good education, we are sure that the women's issues will not have a lot of challenges here and there. So education is still a challenge. We want our leaders to make schools a safer space for girls. And we also want certain key issues surrounding education to be addressed by Parliament. There's still some violence against girls in schools, much as government came up some time back and stopped corporal punishments. But we still have sexual violence against girls in schools. And these are the things, the issues that discourage our girls from going to school. We believe that if more girls are sent to school, the women's issues will be a simpler one to deal with.
You know, between January and June,
yes,
according to the police report, it shows that 7,000 girls were defiled and raped.
Oh, yeah.
And it's such a huge number, a huge number. And of these, 250 were defiled. And it shows how much the community needs to change. Now, that said, let's come back to elections here. The way women are being handled. Do you feel we should have a task force within the enforcers of the police and the military security agencies that is a women wing that can possibly handle the women affairs? I understand there is, but the numbers are a little, you know, smaller compared to the magnitude of the work.
I think yes, Andrew. There should be an increased participation also of our own into the security sector, our own into the leadership of the UPDF and the police. Perhaps we shall be understood better. I'm not comfortable seeing women being bundled and thrown onto police pickups, and I've seen this strictly with the police. So we want the increased participation of women into the security sector. We must coexist with the police. Police, you're not the designed enemies of the women. We are your mothers, we are your sisters, we are your female counterparts. So we want our own to be up there, so maybe we can be better understood and this brutality can stop. I hope.
What is your biggest worry as you're heading to the 2021 elections? Now, today we have the LC5s, they're already vying for the positions, and we had the primaries of NRM, which I'm sure you must have released a dossier for that, how bad it was. But now, going forward, 2021, what are some of your worries, especially when it gets to women in elections?
I'm worried of the violence, because we have seen the primaries. You know, Andrew, how it went. And I'm also worried that some women will be threatened and they shy away from what they're pursuing. And yet, for me as Jane and my colleagues from the civil society, would want more women up there into parliament so that our issues are fully represented. So I'm so worried of this violence that we've already started witnessing. I'm also worried that certain issues, like for now, our own, the coalition of human rights defenders and a few members are pursuing the human rights defenders bill. And we know our own, when they go there, they can understand better the women human rights defenders. By the way, Andrew, I am blessed to have worked together with Madam Margaret Sekaja. We are still working together. She's the chairperson of the National Coalition of the Human Rights Defenders, where I sit as the chairperson, technical, thematic working group. And we keep talking about pursuing a few things that can make our work easier in parliament. We need to send leaders. Yes, this is when we need more women to go up there and push for certain bills that protect us, especially the women human rights defenders. It's not been easy because you're defending the rights of a fellow Ugandan, and the police will look at you as though you're challenging their work. Sometimes they think you are an enemy of the state. And it's that agitation they use. That attitude. So it will only get better when we send people who can push for our agenda. Yes. Well,
going forward, what are your thoughts on the affirmative action seats and the women who turned them into lifetime positions? Like they have never left. They came and they're not shifting. And Jen Francis Olingi is here saying, you know, we need to bring in more women. But there are those who are sitting and they've made them, it's more like they're building a monarchy of sort or a lifetime. Like they're not leaving, yet you're drumming for the young girls to actually come up and take up positions of leadership. What do you make of that?
This is the reason for the first time in a lifetime, for the first time, the women are meeting into their different groups. We want to tactfully vote them out, Andrew. Tactfully. Have you been to Koboko of recent anyway?
Yes, I have been there.
It's just a question, Andrew, it's just a question.
Okay.
So we are trying
as a case study, yes.
Oh, yeah. We are trying to send the women who we know are fresh, with the minds for us, women for other women. And we also know those women who have been in parliament probably for 10 years, and we are counting. What have they done for us? What is it that they've brought on table for other women? How come the women still continue to suffer poverty? How come the women still lack the basics to feed their children? So we are also, seriously, this is why the votes of any Ugandan should be respected, because we are voting out those who never cared about our agenda. And this answers the question that some of those women who have spent so many years in parliament, they don't pick the calls of other women, they don't speak about our issues. You will have a rest this time, seriously.
Now let's talk about women voting. Research shows that women are very, you know, they are very okay when elections are going on, rather campaigns. they'll stand vibrantly,
Oh,
say, I
yeah.
think this one is a good candidate. But when it gets to the voting day, there is a wave that pulls back and they don't go and vote. What could be some of the pushing factors that during campaigns they all seem to be up in
Supporting.
arms and ready, but on the poll day there is a wave, there is a big number we miss as a nation that says no, I won't vote.
It gets back to the life skills issues. Andrew, I may know you're not a very good candidate, but in my heart, I will know who I want to vote.
Okay.
But I will be there with you. But when I know the other candidate can represent me better. And this is how candidates lose. Because even those voters at the grassroots know you. They know you will not, they understand that you're working for your own agenda. And so they will be there for you and with you. But on the polling day, they will go and vote who they like and who they want. So I think also the candidates, this is a time for them to really sit and look at themselves and ask themselves, am I the potential candidate? Am I that candidate who is going to represent Ugandans? Am I that candidate who is going to address the issues affecting my people? But if the answer is no, please sit back and do other things, because this time Ugandans are more serious than ever before.
Talking about the push factors, why do women hold back? Is it something to do with intimidation? Is it because they look at the poll day and they're like, I don't want to be in a... I'll give you an example of these primaries where one husband in one district chose to vote for another person and the wife chose to vote for another person, and the husband said, I'm done. I'm the head of the house, you should vote the one I vote. Is this kind of intimidation or society gratification in one or the other avoiding, rather hindering the women from voting? Is that intimidation you're talking about?
Yeah,
Or
partly.
what kind of magnitude are you explaining?
Partly, and the community and the local leaders should also look at that seriously, because we have had cases where husbands dictate or male partners.
Even landlords.
And they say, this is the person we should, as maybe this street, we are voting particularly this person. As a household, this is the candidate. And yet you, as a wife, you have your own candidate. And these are some of the issues we addressed when we spoke to the chairman, EC. We want all these issues to, we want to be protected, to vote the persons we want. And we want the police also to take note that every Ugandan is free to vote who they want. And so our male partners or the husbands and landlords and even the LCs should not tell us who to vote, because for us, we want a better parliament. If you go to parliament instead of talking about our issues and you want to fight another MP, how do we take you back there? This is when we should be given the freedom to fairly choose who we want. Irrespective of the husbands we have, actually they shouldn't tell us who to vote. Like me, in my heart, I know my candidate, Andrew. Now, if my husband comes up and says, Jen, this is who I want, I will report him to police. He's interfering with my constitutional right. I know who to vote. And why should you, because you are my husband, you tell me don't vote so-and-so, don't vote this one? So that what happens next? I'm not represented? No, of course.
Well, let's look at the husbands. You hinted about something about the husbands, and it got a little bit much more patent. These women, while you're in the community, do they open up how their husbands suppress their voice to speak about their pursued candidates, their preferred candidate? And how are you planning to engage the men as well? Because if you engage the women alone and they go back, men are going to look at it like, so Jen Francis is your support structure. So how best do we bring the men into this, the inclusion to this conversation?
We have had a good time speaking to the women, a very long time. And starting from next Friday, at Oyam district.
Okay.
We are gathering so many men and having dialogues with them. We have the same meetings organized in Lira. We have the same meetings organized in most of the districts, especially where I'm working up there. So we want to really have dialogues and agree on certain points and ask the
With
men.
men?
Yeah, with men
Okay.
alone. And boys, the adult youth. We want to ask them to give these women their rights to vote who they want. We also want to teach, to give some bit of civic education to the men. And you know, this time, Andrew, Ugandans did not get enough civic education. I
Because of the
understand,
lockdown.
because of the lockdown, COVID, we understand those challenges. But we needed the media to be given this opportunity to do enough civic education to Ugandans so that these issues are addressed. But nevertheless, we are talking to the men, we are talking to the boys, the ones at the voting age, so that there is no oppression in these coming polls.
Let's talk about election financing. Like you said, there are very many issues that curtail the women, especially that it even scares them.
Yeah.
Election financing. How are the women holding up with regards to election financing? Because some candidates have a lot of money, or some men have lots of money, and they say, for me to give you the money, we have to have a different agreement, and you can go through that. How do we navigate that?
I always tell people, I've been singing about this for the last 10 years, that to be voted is not about money. If you don't want to give me your money and you want us to have a different agreement, my character, my ways as Jane versus your money, I will hold on to my strength as a person, and I would believe that I will be voted on that ground. So I've challenged the candidates with so much money, and they want to buy even votes, that no, even the other candidate who has no money but has been a very honest member of the community and he's trusted and has stood the test of time will be the one sent to parliament. So you spend your money the way you want, but surely after you will have to go back and look for something else to do, not parliament, because money does not count. I want to tell Ugandans who think it is only money that makes them vote buying does not count. It doesn't. I have seen candidates with money and they've still lost elections. Ugandans will have to stand on their integrity and vote someone with tested and proven character, not the other one with money. For me, actually, I doubt so much these candidates who go dishing money. And I think our security managers in this country should take note of such people. Since when did we start buying votes? Since when did we start paying for votes? It is not allowed, first of all.
And how has this affected the women, the ones who are vying for positions? How has this election, you know, financing that is heavy, that it's even seen in broad daylight when someone is giving someone? How has it affected the women to participate on the level ground?
Of course, if I'm watching my counterpart, maybe someone else we are vying for the same position with, dishing a lot of money, psychologically I will be intimidated. I will be scared that now me, Jane, who has no money, who will vote me? And that psychological feeling alone will affect you as a person, that you can't even you can't talk about your point programs, what you're going to do in parliament. You lose out the confidence because you think you don't have the money, and you've seen your counterpart dishing out money. And I think this shouldn't be the case. I would have no money and confidently tell the people what I want to do for them and make sure I am voted. So the dishing of money is also something that should be looked at. It should, I think it should stop. And
the law is very clear. So, Jen Francis Oling, as you're winding up, what could be your last word to the women vying for any position, or even those who are going to vote on any poll day?
We have a deal with these women. We've been pushing a lot for the domestic relations bill. We've been pushing for the sexual offense bills. We want these bills and a few others to come out clearly. Now, if you're going to parliament, make sure you are that candidate who is going to fight for our issues, who is going to think about the education of girls in this country, who is going to think about having women not face violence, who is going to make sure parliament comes up with something that protects us from being murdered, protects us from gender-based violence, protects us, the women, from any form of violence, because this country is only stable when the women are not facing any form of violence.
Absolutely.
So those are the few demands, and also strengthening a lot of household income to make sure that single mothers and widows and other vulnerable women in this country are able to move on, are able to look after their children. We want to move on from where we are, and it is only better leaders who can take us from here to where we need to be.
Thank you so much. That is Jen Francis Oling, who happens to be the Executive Director of Women in Development. It's a conversation about women in elections. Please make sure that the same energy you have while you're listening to the manifestos and the mandate of those coming up, it's the same energy you use on the D-Day when you go and vote. Don't be intimidated whatsoever the case is. And for the men, don't intimidate your wife. Let her voice be heard. If it's different, very fine. If it's the same, it's as well fine. But let's keep them into the shape where let's give them the flair they need so that they can have their issues addressed. That will take us for a break, and I'll be back shortly. It's Morning at NTV.